Hey everybody, welcome to Missing Links with John, Brock, and myself, Stephen King, where we discuss what's missing in Web3 architecture. This week, we talk about
what's going on with Tornado Cash.
For feedback, please go to missinglinks.fm, send us an email, give us some feedback on what we discuss and what you'd like us to cover next week. All right, let's get into it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Missing Links, where we talk about the missing infrastructure in Web3 with myself, Brachiosaurus, and John. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Doing good.
So we were just having some fruitful conversation around what's going on with Tornado Cash. And so because it's in the news and it seems to be a topic that is actually, it's pretty relevant in terms of decentralization. So we thought it would be a good idea to touch on what's going on and how this could be, or how this could transition the industry towards, regulation, oversight, less privacy. You guys tell me. I mean, why don't we just start with, for those that don't know what Tornado Cash is, John, why don't you just give us a 2-minute explainer of what is Tornado Cash?
So the best way to think about Tornado Cash is think of it as just almost think about it as like a traditional bank. Everyone throws their money in there, and when you get your money out, you don't know what the serial numbers are. So think of it as you threw $100 into your Chase bank account and you got $100 back. That $100 technically wasn't the physical money you actually gave them. It could have been someone else's money. It's just all mixed in a pile. So that's why it's called a mixer, an Ethereum mixer. And the idea of how Tornado Cash was to add a little anonymity, like true anonymity, to your funds by depositing it, and then it gets mixed in with other funds and then sent somewhere else. So it's almost just like a more transparent bucket of money than something that sits in a vault in a physical bank. So that's kind of what Tornado Cash is in a nutshell. Obviously, there's been a lot of speculation about is it good, bad, and obviously we're going to have a great conversation here. But
hold on, have you guys ever seen Office Space? You guys might be. I don't know if this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you know where they're trying to figure it out. They're like looking up laundering money in the dictionary.
Yeah.
So Tornado Cash is it kind of like when you really jump into it, it is a little bit like it's a good money laundering mechanism. So I can see why that's been an issue. You just mix it all up, and and there people make the point of the like those that are known. If you have if you're popular in the Ethereum community and you want some privacy, you use that. I mean, I think that's a decent case. But anyway, it just kind of reminded me of that. So Brock, what's going on with it? Why is there all this talk and chatter with OFAC and regulators and all that jazz?
Yeah, so it's fascinating because like a traditional mixer or money laundering service, there's like a human element, right? So you can, like, as OFAC trying to protect security, whatever, they can usually sanction individual humans in some fashion, or a business. But Tornado Cash is purely a smart contract on the Ethereum chain. And so it's somebody deposits money, they get a password, and then they can withdraw like the same amount of money with that password anytime in the future.
Well, then why is everybody freaking out about their money being locked up?
So what has happened, well, like OFAC has now essentially said that as like if you're a US citizen and you interact with Tornado Cash in any way, you're breaking the law. And so if you've already deposited money and you want to withdraw it to your own address, that's now illegal.
Yeah. Think of it like this. It's like you went to the casino and bet $100, and then gambling became illegal, and they're like, "Can I get my $100 back?" Yeah, here's your $100, but here's an indictment too with it. So
right.
It's like no one's going to risk saying I did something illegal. Can I have my money back? Unless you're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars, and then maybe at that point you can afford a good lawyer.
Well, hold on. So I understand. So basically, to back up a little bit, so it's just smart contracts on the blockchain So in theory, you should be able to get your money back, right? But the problem is that a lot of the UIs that support Tornado Cash front ends, they saw OFAC get involved and they shut down their front ends, their APIs or whatever was connecting with Tornado Cash. But what if you're technically smart and you can, is there a way to kind of poke and prod if you've got, $10 million in there? Can you get it out?
You can even still use the Tornado Cash UI because it's served over IPFS. Like you can access it right now in the US.
You would just have to point it. You would have
It's
to.
just like illegal to.
Yeah, you would just.
But there's
you need to run your own node because a lot of node providers can't support it. But if you could theoretically pull the site from IPFS, point it to your own node. Theoretically,
the main issue would be is if you withdraw funds from Tornado Cash to a wallet address
and then try to liquidate
those. Well, yeah, you can't do anything with those funds because those funds are now tainted. Yeah, so you'd have to find another mixer that hasn't been sanctioned to remix your funds to then have them be clean.
So this is even if it's if I've got $10 million, it's my $10 million. I've done nothing wrong. I was just using this because I'm a popular guy in the Ethereum community and I wanted some privacy. And if I go today to pull out that $10 million, it's illegal no matter what.
Straight to jail.
Yeah. And they can trace where it comes out. And so that's the whole issue is if you withdraw it, they can now trace that money from there on out.
Got it. Okay. And then so there was a second part of this leg around I forget the term, powder something. They're spreading where basically somebody was depositing 0.01 in a lot of people's accounts. So John, why don't you talk a little bit about that and what that means?
Yeah, like they're.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about how they funds that were withdrawn?
What was the term?
They were obfuscating. Is that the right word? They were pretty much taking the full transaction and then throwing it in different accounts.
Well, so there was that, but they were also
random people, right?
Dusting. But they were sending like Brian Armstrong. They sent 0.1 ETH, and there's no evidence that Brian Armstrong himself actually used Tornado Cash, but somebody sent him funds from Tornado Cash, and so it's just kind of trolling,
thus tainting that account.
Right.
Yeah.
So why is that relevant as part of all this? Brian Armstrong gets 0.01, so it shows that he's interacting with Tornado Cash. So is he now sanctioned or part of this sanction list?
I'm assuming he ends up on a list somewhere, and somebody's got to manually check it.
Yeah, and so this now comes, I think, to the hypothetical. Is that right? Even though someone pulled the funds and screwed with someone, was trolling or doing something. We've all held currency, right? I guarantee every person who's held a single dollar has probably been in a stripper or used for drug money. Does that make you as an entity, bound to be banned or investigated? Probably not. So I think this is where technology has kind of gotten to the point where, and this I think comes to the question we're trying to discuss today, is what is good regulation, bad regulation, and what is a good safety net versus a bad safety net? Because I think that is kind of what a lot of people, at least within the sphere I follow on crypto Twitter, is you look at these big banks that have been laundering money for other companies for many years until they got caught. So it's and for example, just was it yesterday, one of the engineers of Tornado Cash got arrested in the Netherlands. He just wrote code.
Yep.
Right? So if I design a missile system or I design a weapon and someone goes kill someone, do I get arrested?
I guess it depends, right? I mean, who are you building that for? Are you building it for Russia or some, mafia?
Well, that's the argument. He just wrote some code and put it on the internet.
Well, yeah, the code is open source. Yeah.
Exactly. So does that make it that's where it kind of gets. The question becomes: is this truly about compliance and security? And I get the whole North Korea money laundering argument because obviously there's some humanitarian and human rights violations associated with that, with the trafficking component. But where do we kind of say that this is more a flex versus actual protecting of public interest? So,
well, is it
kind of want your thoughts?
Yeah, is it ever in the public's best interest? Usually not. So I'm curious what this means. I mean, look, we all know crypto's not anonymous, even pseudonymous. It's way easier to track than most anything else. And so, but with OFAC, getting involved, what do you guys think that means in terms of privacy? Is that, I mean, first of all, let me ask this. Do these mixers actually work? I mean, if you really want to take $10 million and put it in Tornado Cash and divvy it up, if you really want to find that person that did that, you still can. Does it really make it that much more difficult or impossible?
So, yeah, I will say one thing. The only way a mixer is possible is no one knows the output volume. So if there's $10 million put in there and 5 million from only 2 people, and you track the outbound transactions, you can correlate what volume went to what person. Because in a lot of cases, it might go do a red Robin Hood where it will end up in an exit account, but that account will then fund the primary account that was part of the original mixer. That's how a lot of these pump and dump schemes, the NFTs, like social media gurus crap, was happening during the beginning of pandemic and all. So I say no at the end of the day, because the data is there. You just need to sift through it. So
Yeah, I think
I think it's the illusion of anonymity.
I was going to say, I think the counter to that is you could argue pretty much all security at its base layer is just obfuscations. So mixing your funds is a form of like obfuscating your funds. And so thereby it adds some level of security.
So you're just really adding time to the government actually, or entity finding you, and the resources that it'll cost them.
Exactly. And like if you make it too expensive, then it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that how most money laundering happens?
Yeah.
You just pump money through a brick and mortar and then change it every year.
Well, yeah, but cash, I feel like cash, you could be way more successful, right? I mean, if you're laundering money out of a restaurant or something like that, I mean, you're cash for cash, unless you've got marked bills. I mean, I guess today it's a little different.
But that's the thing. Even with cash, it's still like you could track it. It just requires a lot of effort.
Yeah, every serial number bill that goes through the federal system, when banks have to move money and do it on a daily basis, once that money hits the Fed, it's get processed and those serial numbers go into a database. Because then they know that these bills, and that's the what is it, Secret Service used in the early 2000s to catch people making bad $100 bills, is that they'll put a supply of hundreds in circulation, and then after time see where they end up, because that tells you about the pattern of the money laundering operation. So instead of tracking it to a brick and mortar Federal Reserve, it's going through an address.
Yeah, just gets harder and harder, but it's all doable.
So Brock, let me ask this. So could this actually be a good thing, right? Because there's no regulation right now. So that guy writing code in the Netherlands, he's got no boundaries to know whether he's allowed to do this or not allowed to do this. And we've run into this building companies, all three of us. And Brock, you don't have to speak specifically to Coinbase, but formerly at Coinbase, there's a lot of controversy. And Brian Armstrong, I have a lot of respect for, because he's trying to work with the SEC, and I don't know about OFAC, but I'm sure other entities. So you don't have to speak specifically to that, but could this actually set up some rails and be a good thing, or like what's the outcome of all this?
I think that's what everyone's hoping, myself included. Like right now, a lot of the stance from the federal government has been to just prosecute. So it's, hey, you did something wrong, but we didn't tell you that it was wrong when you started. But now it is, so we're going to like penalize you for it. And so it's like, even in this instance, you could draw conclusions that, hey, building a mixer is going to be illegal. And that's like, maybe that was a fair assumption before, but like it's more whatever. It's an assumption that you can really make now. So you're like getting these soft guidelines, but if we could get some official publication from the federal government on like do's and don'ts and regulation around cryptocurrency, blockchain, those sorts of things, I think that'd be really beneficial.
John, is that what you think as well?
I do think about that as I 100% agree with Brock, but to another point, a huge like wording is so big, and like you said, like if we can have guidelines, like what is considered a mixer? What do you truly consider a mixer? Because thinking back to some of our old projects when we were doing like escrow commons and stuff like that, and funds were moving, if they both sit in the same place and
we
they're not
unofficially had a mixer.
Yeah, like is
Right.
that considered a mixer without being a mixer?
Exactly.
Right, it's escrow,
Right.
right? So
yeah,
that's
we
where
didn't
it's
call
like,
it that though. So
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that's why I agree 100% with the terminology what Brock has to say. But I think the one thing that I'm a little hesitant is that there's more education about what it is, because a lot of the people that were hurt during this big boom were either through pump and dumps or some NFT scams, and a lot of it was the younger generation, our generation. And I think that having almost not like a public announcement, but a public campaign on how to educate people about this is huge, because there's financial literacy about the traditional financial system, but nothing out there really about this new age of financial systems. And once people are a little
John,
more in tune,
I sorry, I have to interrupt. I disagree wholeheartedly, only because I think the gateway to crypto is you have to lose money. That's the only motivation that like, honestly, because if all three of us have lost money at some point, at least once. I know that I've more than once. And actually recently, yeah, I'm not going to go into it, but
a couple zeros
I
there then, Stephen.
But honestly, because like growing up, right? Like, how much did you learn about like how credit works and how the financial system works? I would guess very little, but crypto gives you a crash course. If you lose even a little bit of money, you're motivated to learn, and it's a much. Would you guys say that the crypto community is more financially literate than the traditional sort of what are they called, TradFi community? Or
I would say they're more lawyers than anything.
But I think in
my opinion.
Well, I was going to say, I think to John's point, like I would agree more with John in the sense that you're right, Stephen, that's been the gateway to date. But I also think that's what's preventing, say, the next billion users from adopting all of this. Like, you can't ask everybody to like take this educational course to just use the internet.
Well, hold on. So I'm going to argue that a little bit, right? So let's look at the last couple of bull cycles, right? So from I lost money in 2013 in that bull market with Bitcoin, and the community was small. But then the next, let's call it 2015, 2016, 2017. I mean, it exponentially grew, right? And then I lost more money actually during the next cycle, not as much, but I lost some then. But honestly, and now for the Brock, you just went to the NFT Fest, and John, you're in terms of the work that you're doing, I mean, it's grown. It's on CNBC. I mean, who knew it would happen this fast? So look, it's not billions of people, but also in 10 years or so, I don't know how many people are using it. Maybe 100 million.
A16Z had a state of crypto report. It's like their estimate was like 7 to 50 million.
That's it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's still small.
It seems way bigger than that.
Yeah. It's just being talked about now.
I think MetaMask does. I think their latest count was 21.
Is that just US?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it was worldwide, right?
Yeah, worldwide. And it's tough to get an estimate because of the pseudo-anonymous nature of it. It's like, I, for instance, have like 5 MetaMask accounts. Like, yeah.
I think that's the issue, and we're getting off topic a little bit right now. But like, look, all right, losing money. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not a good gateway into any industry. But it sure does motivate you, or anyone, I would think, most people to learn if they're interested in that. If they're interested in those communities. And really what's brought people in is the bull cycles. So if those get smaller and smaller, there'll be less motivation to get people in. But back to sort of regulation, so you guys, John, you were saying you agree with Brock that you think that this is going to lead to more sort of goalposts being set so that people know what they can do and can't do?
Exactly. And just to the previous point, because it ties into this, MetaMask last month was around 30 million unique monthly users. And on top of that, there's an incentive when you create a new MetaMask account to kind of do the pseudo training on how to prevent phishing attacks and all these other things. So this kind of just ties back in, like, no one should for something as we came into this age of information where everything is so readily available through the internet and stuff, I think having people have a bad experience off the bat is not beneficial, because the internet's an echo chamber, and if adoption's true, like the big thing here, there needs to be kind of a road to adoption that people don't feel stressed with something they don't truly understand. Because this versus like old time banks where you understood, you had a savings account and like how the bank worked with the Fed and all, and then you go into this idea of having a wallet, and then what the hell a wallet is compared to,
You can curse.
a routing number. So it's like, oh, fuck that. Are we allowed to? I don't know. Are we going to get striked?
I don't know, but it's not like we're making money, so I don't think it's a big deal.
It's whatever our rating is. It's fine.
Okay, fuck yeah. So, right, yeah.
Now John's going to be cursing like a sailor.
So pretty much like, so I think, Stephen, you made some good points. I think people are incentivized to learn the right way if they have lost something, but I don't think for this type of system it's beneficial, especially with, it's easy for people to say,
I don't think it should be necessary.
Make a bank account. Yeah. I don't think it needs to be necessary, because it's not popular enough in volume that people are like, okay, I screwed up, but I need to use this. They could just say, I'm done with this. I'm going to the bank.
Well, I think the privacy thing's important. And so, Brock, let me ask you this. I mean, we were talking about this. So I think people that on Venmo are crazy, that are spent $15 on going to a psychiatrist, and everybody can see that. I'm not like any kind of an influencer by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't want people that I don't know or that I even know seeing that I spent whatever money where. I just think that's a bad idea. And so I think that the mixers are sort of a stretch. I wouldn't go out of my way to use a mixer unless people could see by default what I was spending money on. So how does this evolve? I mean, if you were going to build a product today that was, an offset of this that was easier to use, do you have any ideas on how you do that gives you the privacy element without having to go and launder money, essentially?
I think it depends on who you're trying to stay private from. So like in the Venmo instance, Venmo knows who you're transacting with, whether or not your friends do, right? So you could hypothetically build a service in a similar way where, like, okay, if you're a Coinbase user transacting with another Coinbase user, that's all off chain generally. So it's internal to Coinbase. It's therefore private to the public, but Coinbase is still going to know about it. So you could imagine building a service where it's like a light version of that. Hey, I have some funds and I want to send them to this other user, and I'm going to go through this middleman in order to do that. And so like that middleman could still be sanctioned by OFAC, for instance, but it gives you that lets you be semi-anonymous without having to like go into this pool and mix your money and do that sort of thing.
So so that makes sense. Coinbase only knows, but even if you're going to do it on chain, there's things like ZK Snarks and Zcash is trying to do this. I mean, I think, I guess my question would be like, what about the government or like sovereign countries, right? If we really go into this digital world and fiat currencies disappear, do they just have technologies that they're using that we don't even know about to move money around? Or are they using something like Zcash in the future, but then you're going to still have this money laundering element? I mean, any thoughts on, kind of how value is going to move on that side of the equation?
I think one thing that we might just one thing. I think we're generalizing the idea of what money laundering is, because money laundering implies that there is an incentive to do harm with whatever you're doing. Like some people just want anonymity. So you have to prove intent to consider it money laundering, at least in the courts. So, yeah, that's.
But John, I guess my question is, I'm trying to separate. Forget about money laundering for a second. I mean, look, this tool was used for money laundering. Lots of things are. I'm just curious more so about the privacy aspect. I mean, that was really being sold when crypto. I mean, I don't know if it still is, but it was when I got into it. And the privacy element, if we're going to be in a world where we're moving cryptocurrency to move value as sort of mainstream function, then I just want to make sure that I'm anonymous from everybody in the government, maybe not the government. So that we can do that kind of today. So we move away from these mixers to what? ZK snarks, because there's like 3 tiers, right? There's people that don't care and they want to show everybody what they're spending money on. Fine, that exists. There's people like me that want to be anonymous from everybody, but if the government has to see it, I have to show them anyway. So that's okay. But then there's the governments themselves that can't let anybody or anything see. That's dangerous in itself, but that exists today anyway. So it's not going to change. So I'm just curious more so on that third tier. Is that, out of these mixers, it seems like they'll become either illegal or something will happen where they'll be used less. So for that third tier though, I'm curious, what is the privacy for the second and third, I should say? Do you guys have any ideas on what that privacy will look like?
I think for the second tier, where it's the government can see it, but you don't want your friends to see it. I think you can reach roughly that level even today just by using different wallet addresses. It is incredibly difficult, for instance, to tie 10 different wallet addresses together. Even if you're clicking around on Etherscan, you have to click all the way back to the original source and see, okay, well, this came from Coinbase. I have no idea if this is the same Coinbase account that funded these other 5 accounts, for instance. If you're the government, you can request that information. You can figure it out. If you have enough resources and time, you can piece it all back together, but it's practically impossible. So that kind of gives you that tier 2. Then I think for tier 3, governments are roughly going to keep doing what they're doing. Hopefully they switch to a blockchain model instead of ECH payments, for instance, because that's crazy. But it could just be a private blockchain that they control, so nobody else can read the transaction history.
So nothing with that ZK snarks and all that, kind of, because that would be nice. I mean, look, I don't want to have 10 addresses. I would love to have my, Steven .eth and use that for everything. But then when I want to use, if I want to use that, if I just want to show a transaction on the blockchain, the problem is it's going to show that hash of 0x whatever, and that's always going to tie back.
Well, so even today, I've done this myself, for instance, just to try it out. You could have Steven.eth, right? You send it to an exchange, and then you withdraw from that exchange to a different address. That's effectively using the exchange as a mixer. And you can now purchase something with that new address. And there's no public tie, but the exchanges are going to know about it.
That's a good point.
I was going to say, at that point, exchanges themselves are pseudo mixers, just like how we were discussing escrow. And at the end of the day, if someone wanted to know what he was exchanging funds for, you're that way. How do I put it? You're using the benefit of complex politics and geopolitical atmospheres, because the only way, if you use an exchange overseas, is you have to then subpoena a foreign government.
Right.
How bureaucracy works. And by that time, it might be, maybe potentially out of the realm of prosecution or time.
To John's point, this is no different than a bank. You get paid $100 cash, you go deposit that in your bank, you go to another country and withdraw $100 in their local currency. It's totally different cash, but still the same value. You got it both places, and there's no public traceability.
If I want to write a transaction, there's no way to, instead of posting my particular address on chain, it posts some kind of other hash that if the recipient or somebody else has the key to it, they can basically then trace it. But unless you have that key, you're just looking at some hash that basically leads to nowhere.
This is a concept that I'm forgetting the name of. It's been talked about. It doesn't exist in Ethereum right now, but like you were saying, Zcash does some of this. It's a concept that gets tossed around, but it becomes more. I think it becomes more expensive at the protocol layer. So at the very basis, then everything becomes more expensive and tougher to say maintain account balances.
Right. I mean, it would make sense that it's more expensive, but it would be worthwhile to some people, or to some governments. I mean, governments would, anyway, so that's interesting. Cool. So, any final thoughts, guys, on kind of Tornado Cash or just privacy in general before we wrap things up?
I was going to say Tornado Cash uses ZK. Like that's like, or they use snarks as like passwords with
Really?
deposit and withdraw. Yeah. That's part of what they were doing.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool.
So I'm optimistic that things will change in the fact that by having, to Brock's point, rules and a set of regulations, or even like a blueprint of what is considered legal or not, that it will allow people to feel more confident using and building stuff, which will then aid in adoption if we look at the development cycle. But as of now, the only thing I'm scared of is if this is being used as a way to kind of, and this sounds so conspiratorial, but using it as a way to kind of silence a decentralized future, as the example of the developer. We don't go after weapons companies when there's mass shootings, so why are we going over after developers? So I think that is my only hesitation, but I think in my kind of final 2 cents is I think this will be a good thing. The question is how prosecution and enforcement will be done.
I think if they go after developers, then that's gonna be, I mean, to your point, it's gonna be very negative, and it's gonna turn a lot of people away. Yeah. If I was actually a developer, I would, if I saw this guy in the Netherlands get prosecuted and go to jail, then I wouldn't write code. I wouldn't write code for things that are even slightly in a gray area, and I think that would really affect just open source in general. So I think that if that does happen, I hope that there'll be a lot of pushback on that. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
There is already a protest going on in the Netherlands, as well as planned protests, I think, in London and Tokyo. So I think this goes more outside the fact the United States and more Western countries that are trying to find a way to deal with this. So hopefully it doesn't spill over into the EU, or that's going to be a problem.
Right. Well, cool. Well, this was a good conversation. So it was. I'm glad that we were able to chat about it. And any of those that listen, Missing Links, or it's hello@missinglinks.fm. Give us a shout. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, and what you want to hear us talk about. So we'll wrap it there. Thanks, guys.